the Great Lillian Hall is a fantastic film as well, and it's such a bold film with incredible performances. And I'd love to start our conversation at the beginning of the film, and I love the opening line of the film. And I'm going to paraphrase, but obviously Lillian talks about the that she has spent a lifetime observing and being observed within her craft and as a person as well. And I'm curious to know what, for you as an artist and as a filmmaker and as a director, what has observation served for you as an artist? How has observation helped you craft the way you bring art to an audience?
Wow, what a good question. I think I would say, first of all, observation was a lifeline.
Mm,
When I was very young, because I was unsure of, as a kid, unsure of who I was,
mm,
um, unsure of what I was supposed to be or what I was supposed to do in life. And I know that I was constantly looking at other people and
mm,
saying, well, I could be that. Could I be that? Could I be that person? Could I be, loud like that person? Could I be funny like that person? Could I be a doctor like that? Could I be a lawyer like that person? Could I be? And I'm afraid in doing all that, I completely lost whoever the hell I was. And so, and to this day, I'm not sure I know,
mm.
but but it just opened a door for me that may have been, psychologically suspect, but it it was
Sure, sure.
it was the way it started for me. And so observation is always, I guess I am always, and this happens in on the street, in life, in whatever, but also, on a stage, in a theater, on a set. I I I I I project myself into other people, other things, other situations, and I think that's where I live in my imagination with things. So, but it was, but I do know when I was young, it was like, oh, I could just be that person, I'd be safe. If I could just turn into that, I'd be okay. If I could, so that's, I think,
It's
where it came from.
it's something that I think is, I don't know if there's a generalized thing for it, but I found myself the same. I found a lot of my understanding of trying to understand who I am and of the world through art and my projections of art and what I brought to things and then what I learned from that as well. And I think that's just the power of obviously I'm a big cinema fan, so that's the power of movies to me, which is quite
Yeah.
incredible. And I guess I'd love to follow up on that in the sense of the side of that, and how Lillian talks about being observed. How is that then formed? Or is that some of the conscious things to you now, the understanding that, you have worked on stage and on screen, both behind and in front of the camera? Is the being observed part something that sort of lingers consciously on your mind as well, that people are watching and sort of taking maybe the same experience you had from things that you have done as well?
I'm going to say that I'm not, I'm going to say that being observed doesn't do that much for me.
Sure. Yeah.
I think the observing, the act of observing and stepping into other characters, other stories as a writer, or other films as a director, stepping into that. And then being observed, I guess, is more analytical. It's more
Sure.
a, a judging of how well you did, how
Mm,
well you, how well you stepped into that person, or how well you stepped into that story, or how well. So it's a little more objective and a little, and of course, there's always the pleasure of an audience, that excitement of an audience. But even so, even like on stage, when I'm acting on stage, it's not so much that I feel I'm being observed, but because it's different. With an audience, you feel like you're participating with something. They're
right.
part of what you're doing.
Mm.
So, yeah. So I'm going to say, observing is a lot more fun than being observed.
No, and I can understand that. I obviously want to talk about the incredible, and I'm sure it's been brought up many times, Jessica Lange in this, which she is absolutely phenomenal. And there was an aspect of the performance that I obviously found quite vulnerable. Well, there was a lot of vulnerability that she showed, and it was obviously as this condition is emerging throughout her. It's the not just the physical aspects of how it affects her, but emotionally how she reacts to it as well. And there is a lot of vulnerability in that. I'm curious to know what that sort of collaboration between the both of you was like in sort of tapping into the emotional side of her deterioration rather than just the physical aspects that you do show throughout the film as well.
Yeah, sure, sure. Well, it was very specific because when I first read the script, I did not write the original script,
Mm,
but the original script was floating around, and it was a very sad movie about a person slipping into dementia.
mhm,
And if you've seen the film, the opening night of the play in the original script happened in the middle of the story, and
oh,
then the last half of the third of the film, the third act, was all about the character becoming worse and worse and worse with the disease.
right.
And I said to them when I came on board, I said, look, first of all, I don't want to make another movie about, it's been done about people slipping into dementia,
Mhm,
and it's been done well. I said, so the first thing I did was I moved that opening night to the end of the film, and I said, it was just an instinct at that time, and I said, you have to give her a triumph. You have to give her that triumph. And when I did that, and when I started working on the script with that structure, which was different, I realized suddenly that we had tapped into something really important. Jessica and I both talked about this a lot. We were now making a movie about courage in
mm,
the face of obstacles. And suddenly the whole story became universal. You didn't have to be a person suffering from dementia to appreciate this story. This was the whole story of humanity, and what makes for us, what makes humanity something beautiful, which is all of us, all of us are going to face something in the end. Nobody gets out alive.
mm,
How we live in the face of that mortality is really, really the great story of courage. And once we tapped into that, then we knew, and Jess knew too, where the emotional story was and what the
mm.
struggle was to get to that triumph, and celebrate that triumph as the triumph of the human spirit, even though we know in the end it's not going to be, we're not cured, it's not better, nobody, we don't escape.
No.
So yeah, so that was how it all got structured.
I think for me, from what I took away from the film as well, the sort of epitome or also the encapsulation of that is her relationship with Edith. I think that courage and that hope between that you were talking about really comes through in how Edith talks to Lillian and sort of her take on that as well. I'd love to know sort of with all the relationships that do occur in the film, was that one that you sort of identified early on that did embody that sort of the spirit of the film more so than the others, or was there another one that sort of stuck out for you, I guess?
Well, no, it was actually Prime. It was Prime. And
Yeah.
that's why I went immediately to Kathy Bates once Jesse was on, because Jessica and Kathy Bates, they go back almost longer than I go back with Jessica. They've spent 20 years.
Mm,
So the there was it took away any necessity to direct,
mm.
to sort of shape performances. They were just they got it. They got it instinctively. They knew what it was. They have lived part of it.
Mm,
They've been in so many situations together, professionally and personally, where they have supported each other one way or another. So all of that legwork was done, and once Kathy agreed to do it, then you know, it was like putting away a piece of the thing. Well, I got that. Now I don't have
Yeah.
to worry about that. So I can move on to the next thing. Yeah. But that
That's
was
got,
true with everyone, you know. And I mean,
yeah.
mostly I went around begging my friends to be in this because, but I knew that Pierce, and because I knew Pierce, I knew that Pierce and Jessica would hit it off, and in the right way,
Mm.
and they absolutely did. And Lily Rabe, I've known since she was like 5 years old. Her father
Yeah.
was the playwright David Rabe,
Yes.
um, uh, and so I knew her growing up, and it was piecing them together that was really lovely, and it just worked out really well.
There's such an authentic chemistry within all the relationships. I believe it was just that one between Edith and Lillian was one that I was so enamored by and gravitated towards. We you did mention the closing moments of the film, the closing scene, the opening night uh scene of the film, and the dialogue of the play. As I was watching the film and sort of picking up, and Lillian's talking about noticing the room for the first time, this tender love she has for the space. And it felt to me like that there was obviously that additional context around what she's saying in the play is how she's feeling as Lillian on the stage at that point. And I'm aware of obviously your incredible stage work and as a playwright and director and an actor, and your love for theatre as well. And I believe the way you shot it and how the score comes in sort of exacerbates that love for the stage and that magic of performance and being in that space. How conscious were you, especially in that closing moments, of the context of Lillian in that moment, and then your own personal love for this art form? How much of that was a conscious extension of your feelings towards the stage work and the space that she works in?
Yeah, absolutely. And more than conscious. We were passionate about it.
Yeah.
First of all, I was in a production of The Cherry Orchard as an
Yes.
actor
Oh wow.
in 1977
Wow.
with Irene Worth was the lead, with Raul Julia, Meryl Streep,
Wow.
um, amazing cast of complete unknowns at that time. But in New York on Broadway, we were on Broadway with The Cherry Orchard. So the play has always been. It was my first Broadway play that I was acting in. And it was for Joe Papp at the Public Theater and then up at Lincoln Center. And it was a huge experience for me. And
Mm,
so the play has always meant something to me. And
sure.
I knew that all of the play is about losing her house
Hmm.
and losing her property. And I knew immediately that, we call the theater the house. You're in the house if you're in the theater. I knew that analogy was going to, and it did, and
Yeah.
it just made perfect sense to me that you say goodbye. When she was saying goodbye to the house, she
Mm,
was saying goodbye to the theater. She was saying goodbye to her life in the theater, her life in life.
mm.
Yeah, it was heaven, and it was nice to steal the best lines from Chekhov too.
Yes, yeah. I did have. I was wondering. I was like, well, there we go. We've got the greatest hits going
Yes.
here at the moment. I'm curious to know, talking about your theatre work as well, how much your time in theatre has informed decisions you make as a film director, and whether vice versa. There are things that go back and forth. I know they're two different art forms within the same sort of industry, I guess, for lack of a better word. But does theater inform decisions you make as a filmmaker and vice versa?
Yeah, not only decisions you make, but how you make decisions. I think
Interesting.
more importantly,
Sure.
because I don't know, uh, film has a lot of mystique about it, and there are a lot of sort of auteur directors who behave in sort of mysterious ways and all that nonsense. But well, not nonsense, because it works
Sometimes
sometimes.
it works and sometimes it is
But
nonsense. No, I would agree.
yeah, but if you come from the theater, it's much more collaborative.
Sure.
You're used to sharing decisions and making decisions with other people, and you treat other people as artists. It's not just the director is the great artist on the film. In a play, the scenic design, the costume design, the sound design, the music design, the thing that, it's much more collaboration, and actors are much more powerful in the theater because you can't edit and cut and change what they've done. You
Totally, yeah.
Once the curtain goes up, they're in charge. They're in
Yeah.
charge of the entire thing. So you learn to respect actors. You learn to respect the playwright and the writing that's being done. um, and that creates a specific atmosphere on the movie set,
Right.
because everyone knows that they're participating. I shot list a movie. I make a list of shots for every scene before we start shooting the movie. And some days I've actually, just so everybody knows what we're doing, some days I've post the shot list right over the craft service where all the little food is.
Yeah.
I just post it on the wall so that there's no secret. This is the work we're trying to get done today, and we're
Mm.
all doing it. And so it just makes, it gives everyone, and it benefits the film because you
Yes.
are allowing all these artists that you've assembled to
Mm.
contribute at their best, at their optimum. And always the goal is give everyone the freedom to feel that they
Mm.
can contribute anything to them. So that's how I work, and
Mm.
that basically comes from the theater.
It's every time I talk to filmmakers or anyone about this, it always comes across as it takes a village to make these things. But I do believe as audiences, we can see when that is working on screen and when that collaboration works. You can always tell when it's not and when it is. And I think when you, not even in a cohesive nature, but just in a spirit of a film, I think is quite important as in the way you see that.
Yeah, yeah, I do think so, and I do
Mm.
think you're right. I do think, well, certainly the work is
Mm.
just always better
Yes.
when everyone is, if you can get everyone operating at top speed, at the top of their craft,
Yeah.
then you have so much to draw on, so much. Yeah.
It's incredible. Well, and if it keeps creating great things for us to watch, then we love it. So I'll close out on this, Michael. And I don't know if I'm grasping at straws with this question, but as I was watching Great Lillian Hall, I couldn't help but sort of make comparisons and see this sort of kindred connection to Gia in a way, in the sense that they are two character-driven stories about two people in different situations. But I was thinking about Angelina Jolie at the start of her career playing someone who was at the start of her career, and then you get Jessica Lange,
Yeah.
who was someone with such a storied career behind her, playing this incredible actress who is towards, and going towards the end of her career. And I'm curious to know whether that is something that was on your mind at all, or whether there was any sort of time, the memories or experiences from Gia that sort of did come up again and sort of mirrored themselves here in the Great Lillian Hall.
Yeah, it's funny. Nobody else has asked that. And I've had this discussion with a lot of friends, and yeah, it did. And I think it started because I added to Lillian Hall, I added these interviews
The black and
that
white scenes, yeah.
people do. And as soon as I did that, I thought, God, this is so like Gia.
Yeah.
And it's it was it was it became very much on my mind, and I kept putting it away, actually pushing it aside. um but it did, even though even though it's different, it is, as you say, there's a parallel
Yeah.
story. Gia at the very beginning of her career, Lillian Hall at the very end of her career,
Mm.
both of them moving toward a sort of end,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and both of them being kind of spectacular in their own way, you
Absolutely.
know. And then, of course, two of the best actresses in the world.
It's it helps. It
that,
helps.
that
They are
doesn't
truly
hurt.
incredible.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
not at
I
all.
had Angie when she was really at the top of her game. I don't know. I don't know if she's doing any acting anymore. She really,
Mm,
it's not quite the same. But she was something special then,
yeah,
and Jessica is certainly something special now. And
yeah.
yeah, I see the parallels too. I also see this thing about women. I seem to be really drawn to
Yeah.
stories about women. I've done these two. I've done Georgia O'Keeffe.
Yes,
This is
yeah.
strange, but some things you don't want to think about too
Too
long.
much. No,
Just
I can
go
understand.
with it,
I can
especially if it's
appreciate it.
working. You know, if
That's
it's
it, right?
yeah, if it's not working, then it's worth thinking about. But if it's working, take it. Run.
Follow that track right until the end.
Absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
Michael, I believe I'm at the end of my time now. Like I said, I was genuinely really excited to chat with you because you are someone who has been a formative part of my love for film and for television, and doing more research about you leading into our chat, and seeing the work you've done. I think it's truly incredible. I believe you've made an amazing impact on art as a thing that people can access and find out these incredible stories. So I just want to thank you for your work. Thank you for taking the time to chat tonight or this morning where you are. And I hope if another opportunity comes up, we can do it another time soon. That'd be fantastic, Michael. I appreciate you.
Great. I can't thank you enough saying all those lovely things, and I really enjoyed this. So I hope I
I'm
do
glad.
see you